Protection is usually imagined as action, as intervention, as arriving in time. But most of it's quieter than that. It's watching, it's listening, it's learning the difference between ordinary sounds and the ones that don't belong. And even then, protection has limits. It can't be everywhere. It can't see through walls. It can only choose where to stand.
You're listening to Tonight's Terror, original horror stories to hear in the dark. Subscribe and share if you're a fan. And now, tonight's story.
It's not stopping. Kara spoke from the bedroom window, looking out over the snow-covered lawn. She held their baby, Teddy, in her arms, bouncing him in a steady rhythm. "That's okay. Nothing's happening this weekend anyway," Justin said. He stepped in behind Kara and tucked his chin against her shoulder. He looked down at their son. Teddy was 4 months old. He was a hellacious sleeper, but incredibly sweet most of the time. He was dozing now, making miniature O's with his mouth, as if he were practicing talking while he slept. "Should you shovel for Mrs. Radcliffe?" Kara asked. Justin sighed and stooped to look out the window toward the home of their elderly neighbor across the street. She had no one to help her, but she didn't need much. Justin raked leaves in the fall and shoveled in the winter. Usually he waited until she wasn't home so she couldn't stop him, or come outside and try to press a $10 bill into his hand. "Yes," he said. "If I do it now before it stops, I'll have to go again, but it'll probably be easier both times." "You're a good neighbor," Kara said, and pecked Justin on the cheek. "You got him?" Justin asked, nodding toward the sleeping baby. Kara nodded and settled into the rocker in the corner. "Turn off the lights when you go?" It was the kind of snowfall that filled Justin's collar and hood with surprising speed. He hadn't crossed the street before he whipped the hood of his Carhartt jacket up to stop the snow from slipping down his back beneath his shirt. The sun had set an hour earlier, in that subtle way winter sun dims to nothing on cloudy days. Justin began carving snow from Miss Radcliffe's walk. Her path was long and uneven, and the work was slow going. Justin paused a moment before he knew he'd begin sweating. He turned and took in the snow globe that was his neighborhood. The house beside their place had sat unoccupied for more than a year before finally selling. When the for sale sign at last disappeared from the front yard, Justin and Kara had opened a bottle of Prosecco and toasted their property value. The long spring and summer months had seen the lawn grow shaggy, and the place had begun taking on an unkempt look. In the autumn, the leaves blanketed the lawn and sat until snow covered them in December. Justin and Kara had no plans to sell, not so soon after having their first child. However, they knew enough to know that living beside a dump was a fate best avoided. The new owner must have worked from home because he never bothered to shovel. Justin had met the man a few weeks prior, and they'd chatted several times since. He was a 50-something with jet black hair Justin imagined was dyed. He introduced himself as Jack. They had hit it off right away, chatting about rock climbing. Jack had seen Justin's bumper sticker advertising the local bouldering gym and mentioned that he'd done a fair bit of climbing himself. Justin toyed momentarily with shoveling for Jack as a gesture of goodwill, but thought better of it. Jack was young enough and able-bodied enough to climb, and he might be put off by Justin shoveling only at his place and the neighborhood octogenarians. There was no sign of movement in Miss Radcliffe's house, and Justin was grateful for it. Jack's place sat dark and quiet as well. It was hard to imagine half the neighborhood had chosen to go out in this weather, but people needed their bread and milk, he mused. The snow only seemed to intensify as he shoveled, falling in heavy, fat flakes. Justin used a big old snow shovel made of wood and metal. It had enough heft to move snow, but also pry up stubborn plates of ice. The wind began to bite, and Justin wanted to be back inside. He carried the insecurity and guilt of a new parent like something left trailing behind him, tugging every time he moved too far from the house. He didn't want to be MIA if Teddy refused to stay asleep. He cleared the last of the walk and began spreading the salt he'd brought along. As he worked his way toward the house, casting salt back and forth in a shallow arc, movement drew his eye to the garage. Something, maybe someone, had passed by the windows that lined the top panel of the garage door. Justin put a gloved hand up and waved, a perplexed look on his face. The windows were dark. Whatever he'd seen wasn't there anymore. If it had been Mrs. Radcliffe, at least he'd said hello. He turned and shuffled cautiously down the walk. When he reached the street, he glanced back. It was harder to make out anything from that distance, but Justin was almost certain there was a person's head and shoulders in the windows again. He squinted through the falling snow, but as he did, the shape evanesced into the darkness of the garage's interior. There was a spring in his step as he half jogged across the street. He told himself it was because his toes were getting cold and he wanted to be inside again. But the encounter, if that's what it was, had unsettled him. He decided he'd watch to see if Mrs. Radcliffe pulled into her driveway that night. If he saw that, he'd know someone else was at her house. Inside, Kara was starting to prepare dinner. "He go down easy?" Justin asked. "Easy peasy. We'll see if it lasts," Kara said, without turning from the cutting board. Justin noted that he wasn't telling his wife what he'd just seen across the street at Mrs. Radcliffe's place. He'd developed a habit, probably a bad one, he thought, of avoiding unsavory topics of conversation with Kara since Teddy was born. In fact, since she'd got pregnant. To him, it felt somehow indecent to place any additional strain on her. News of a mass shooting, a close miss in traffic, veiled comments from his boss about layoffs. Justin knew he'd need to give it a rest sooner or later, but each time he saw her holding their tiny baby, he felt the instinct pull at him. Protect her. Protect them both. "I didn't see Mrs. Radcliffe. Did you see her go out today?" Justin asked, trying to sound only vaguely interested. "It's your day to watch her," Kara said with a raffish smile. "Anyway, aren't you pleased? You hate it when she comes out and thanks you." "Oh, I do," Justin said dismissively. "What are we making?" "Salmon salad, nothing exotic. Will you grab the monitor?" Justin retrieved the baby monitor from its charger in the living room. As it flickered to life and the image appeared, a shock of panic tore across his scalp. The bassinet was empty. Teddy was gone. His heart pounded in his chest. Justin opened his mouth to shout Kara's name when the image reset. The wrinkles in the bedsheets shifted in an instant and Teddy appeared. Justin exhaled. This glitch had taken turns horrifying Kara and him. The monitor occasionally held on to the last image from the previous time it had been powered on before reconnecting to the live feed. "I hate this baby monitor," Justin announced as he strode back into the kitchen. "Got you again?" Kara asked. "I'm going to have a heart attack or break my ankle tearing up the stairs to his room one of these days," Justin said. They turned on some music and played it quietly while they finished making dinner. Outside, the snow fell, steady and silent. Kara shook Justin awake that night. "Wake up, Justin," she whispered urgently. He rolled over and squinted into the dark where he imagined her face to be. "What is it?" Kara was sitting up in the bed, her head cocked to one side. She put a hand on Justin's chest to signal him to wait. A low thump emanated from somewhere outside. "There. Did you hear that?" she asked. "What is it?" Justin asked, clearing his throat. "What time is it?" "It's after 2, Kara said. "I was up feeding Teddy. When I was coming down the hall back to bed, I heard it the first time. It sounded like something fell on the house." "Snow sliding off the roof?" Justin offered. "No, I've heard it a few times. It's not snow. It sounds way harder than that," Kara said. Justin was already out of bed. He pulled a crumpled hooded sweatshirt from the floor and slipped it on. "So cold," he said. "Is the nursery this cold?" "It's fine. Can you see anything?" Kara asked. Justin was peering between the slats of the Venetian blinds, 2 fingers holding the vinyl apart to make a peephole. "Nothing. Lots of snow," Justin said. "Want to go and see from the windows downstairs?" Kara asked from the bed. "Yes," Justin answered flatly. "I want that very much." As he padded down the hallway in the dark, he was careful not to crash into the clothes drying rack outside the laundry room. Justin paused at his son's door and looked in. Teddy lay on his back, his hands both free of his swaddle. His arms were up in the air. He was slowly opening and closing his hands as he slept. Kara joked that he looked like he was casting spells when he did that. Justin had read that Teddy was only now becoming aware that those were his hands. It was hard to conceive of that level of helplessness before. Now it only made Justin more aware that Teddy was utterly dependent on him and on Kara. The first floor was dark and quiet. Justin made his way from window to window. He checked almost every vantage point he could without seeing anything out of the ordinary. He pushed aside the drapes at the window facing Jack's house. The view was entirely blocked. Justin pulled the shade up and looked again, still perplexed by what he was seeing. It was a mass of white and green pressed to the glass of the window. Slowly, he began to pick out the features of a tree. The evergreen beside the house had fallen. "What a shame," Justin said softly to the empty dining room. He moved to the next window and opened the blind to see the extent of the damage. Instead, he saw a dark shape moving along the fence beyond the fallen tree. It was low and fast. Through the falling snow, it looked more like a black smear against the white landscape. The bear? Justin wondered. Instinctively, Justin moved to the front of the house where the shape had been headed. He pulled open the front door. The storm door was opaque, with spider-webbing ice crystals. He decided to venture a quick look and opened it. As he pushed his head through the small gap, he was temporarily blinded by the falling snow. He shook his head and squinted into the blizzard. An enormous black dog stood, leering, just feet away. The snow was heavy, but Justin could see it clearly enough. It was tall, even as it sat on its haunches. He could see the cords of great muscle coiled near its neck. On cue, a low growl rumbled up from the animal. Justin didn't hesitate. He pulled his head back inside and locked the door. Kara was already asleep again when he slipped back into bed. He didn't mind. He wasn't eager to share what he'd seen, and Kara needed every second of sleep she could get before the baby needed to eat again. Justin lay awake for a long time, thinking about the dog. Why was it alone? Why would it be out so late in a snowstorm? He'd never seen a stray in their neighborhood before. It didn't take long for him to start spiraling. Hideous scenarios where a dog went for Teddy while he was turned away at the wrong moment. Failure and heartbreak on scales he didn't know were real. These rabbit holes, as he called them, had become common since their son was born. At the bottom of each was the one unbearable truth. He couldn't protect Teddy all the time. Not from everything. "What a shame," Kara said as she stooped to look out the window at the fallen tree. "I thought that tree had a lot of life left in it." "Me too," Justin said. "I'll go out after I eat and see if it did any damage to the house. It was pretty tall, at least up to the roofline." He was bouncing Teddy rhythmically as he walked around the kitchen. Teddy was much more easily pacified if whoever was holding him was on the move, it seemed. By the time Justin woke up that morning, he decided to tell Kara everything about the night before. He'd rather she knew about the dog than be surprised by it. "What kind of dog was it?" she asked. "I don't know. It was big, dark color, maybe black or brown, muscles like ropes. If I see it again, I'm calling animal control." "I didn't notice a collar," he said. Regardless, we put Teddy in the car, in the garage, before opening the door. Cool? Yeah, Kara said with a nod. Smart. Hey, look, the snow stopped. Justin ran their snowblower for a moment just outside the garage. It had a habit of quitting a minute after coming to life. He looked out over the transformed neighborhood. Hedges, retaining walls, and bushes were coated in white domes, carved smooth by the wind. Mrs. Radcliffe's house was still and dark. Even his own footprints, crisscrossing her driveway from the night before, had been erased. A half hour later, the driveway was cleared. Justin didn't like the idea of being snowed in. Every winter, he kicked himself for not buying a car with four-wheel drive. It would be another few winters before they could think about buying a new one. Some storm, a voice called out. Justin looked up, shading his eyes against the brilliant reflection of the sun off the snow. It was Jack. He stood on his side of the low fence that separated the properties. Hey, Jack, Justin said brightly. I heard another one's coming right behind it, too. Jack shook his head sagely. Haven't had a winter like this in years. Has me feeling nostalgic. Justin didn't share the sentiment, but he smiled and nodded. He liked Jack and wanted to be friends. Do you want me to come and run the snowblower over at yours? Justin asked. No, don't put yourself out. I'll call up a plow service eventually. I'm not going anyplace anyway. I'm up to my neck in there, he said, jerking a thumb at the house. Buried in boxes, huh? Justin said. Jack didn't answer. He was looking off into the backyard. Trees down. I thought I heard something last night. He looked at Justin out of the corner of his eye while he surveyed the space between their houses. You lost one too? Justin said. I only noticed our big pine came down. I haven't been over to look yet. Seems so. Oh well, we can plant more when this mess thaws, right? Jack concluded and turned to go. Before he got more than a few steps, Justin surprised himself by inviting him to dinner. I can't imagine you have much energy for cooking with the move-in chaos. Jack looked up thoughtfully at Justin and Kara's house, as if considering whether he wanted to cross a boundary like this one. Driveway chats, sure, but going into the house? After a pause, he smiled broadly. Absolutely. What can I bring? The snow in the yard was 2 feet deep. Justin had to take high, labored steps to cross the stretch from the edge of the driveway to the fallen tree. It rested against the house and window, slumped like a sleeping thing. Justin didn't think it had broken the window glass from what he'd seen inside, but it had to go. He thought he could heave it sideways and keep the heaviest section of the trunk from dragging along the siding. In the end, he was right. He put his back against the bulk of the limbs and pushed. The tree slid gently down and away from the house. He heard the sound of pine needles brushing the house, but there was no damage left behind that he could see. Justin reached between the branches and grasped the tree near the base of the trunk. He could drag it to the property line behind the house until he figured out what to do with it. As he tugged the tree away from the house, he was pleased to feel it come away from the stump cleanly. He wouldn't need to trudge back to the garage for his handsaw. As he pulled the tree clear of the house and the stump, he stopped short. There was something odd about the remnants of the tree's base. The wood fibers were crushed and torn, not bent by gravity, but struck again and again. When Justin looked closer, he saw that the stump had been left jagged, its top hacked into an uneven crown, as if someone had tried to pass a clean cut off as storm damage. He dropped the tree and straightened. The morning was silent. All the normal sounds of the neighborhood were muffled by the snow. Justin looked around. He suddenly felt like he wasn't alone. It was as if someone hoped he'd noticed this hasty cover-up and was watching him then. Peering over the low fence, he saw the stump of the downed tree in Jack's yard. Jack had already sawed the stump neatly. A halo of sawdust ringed what was left of the tree. At dinner, he could ask Jack if he'd noticed the same odd condition of the fallen tree before he hauled it off. You invited the neighbor to dinner? Kara asked Justin as he pulled his boots off in the entryway. Justin approached her and took Teddy from her arms, smiling down at the sleeping infant. Jack, yeah, I like him. And I don't have any friends, Justin said with a chuckle. It's just not like you, Kara said. You want to invite Miss Radcliffe, too? Justin was touring the living room with Teddy, looking out the windows and bouncing him gently. I would not. I'm getting the creeps from her lately, or at least from her house. It's so dark. It gives me a bad feeling. The other night, he began, but stopped himself. What's that? Kara asked. She was on the floor, stretching in yoga poses behind Justin. Nothing. I just got bad vibes while I was shoveling at her place, he said neutrally. Without taking his eyes from the window, he continued, What does she do in there all the time? Kara exhaled a long breath as she dipped into a child's pose on the carpet. Then she answered skeptically, Mrs. Radcliffe? Isn't she like 100? She probably reads or watches daytime TV. I don't know. What about at night? I think something weird might be going on over there. You sound like Tom Hanks in that movie The Burbs, Kara said, laughing. I think you need to go back to work. Paternity leave is wearing on you. That it is, but I still love it, Justin said, giving Teddy a squeeze. If you make a list, I'll run to the store before the snow starts again. Jack arrived that night just after 6, snow clinging to the shoulders of his coat. He stamped his boots once on the mat, then paused as if deciding whether to do it again before stepping inside. Hope this is all right, he said, lifting the paper bag in his hand. Wine felt like a gamble, parents of a new baby and all. It's perfect, Kara said. She took the bag and set it on the counter. Come in, it's cold out there. Jack shrugged out of his coat and hung it on the hook by the door, smoothing it once before turning around. Teddy made a small sound against Justin's chest. Justin shifted him and began pacing the living room, the familiar loop worn into the rug by weeks of doing exactly that. That him? Jack asked. Yes, Justin said proudly. Teddy. Jack nodded and leaned forward slightly, careful to keep his hands to himself. Hey, Teddy. Teddy's eyes fluttered, then closed again. Good timing, Jack said. Looks like he just ate. Kara smiled. You have kids? Jack shook his head. No, just been around them. He didn't say where. Kara didn't ask. They ate at the table by the window. Snow clung to the window screens in small white clumps. Jack ate steadily, but not much, pausing often to drink water. So, Justin said midway through the meal, that tree in your yard. Jack looked up. Yeah? When I was clearing ours, it looked like it might have been cut, Justin said. Not cleanly, just odd. Jack frowned, not defensively, as if replaying the image. His eyes drifted upward. Cut. That was my impression, Justin said. I wasn't sure. Jack set his fork down. I didn't notice anything like that. When I went out, it was already down. I figured the wind took it. You didn't see any marks at the break? Jack shook his head. Not that I remember. Justin nodded and let it go. They talked about the neighborhood. Jack said he liked it, that it reminded him of places he'd lived before. Kara talked about how quiet it usually was, and how the snow seemed to press everything closer together. Have you seen Mrs. Radcliffe lately? Justin asked, keeping his tone light. Jack thought for a moment. I've met her, he said, but I haven't seen her up and about for a few days. You met her? Kara asked. Yeah, when I moved in. She came out to tell me where the property line was. He smiled, sharp as a tack. Justin hesitated, then asked, You haven't seen anyone else over there, have you? Friends, family, that kind of thing? Jack shook his head. No, just her. Justin nodded. You haven't seen her car? Not that I can recall, Jack said. Maybe she's visiting family, Kara said, or avoiding the cold. Smart, if that's the case, Jack said. Teddy fussed, and Justin stood again, walking the length of the room. Jack's eyes followed the movement without lingering. "Growing fast?" Jack asked. "That's what everyone says. We see him every day, so it's hard to notice sometimes," Justin replied. After dinner, Kara cleared the plates and put the wine away unopened. Jack stood and stretched, lifting his arms high above his head before catching himself and laughing. "Sorry. Habit." "No worries," Kara said. "We're glad you came." Jack pulled on his coat. At the door, he paused, listening. Outside, the wind picked up, snow tapping lightly against the house. "Looks like it's not going to let up," he said. "Yeah," Justin said. "They're saying it'll keep coming through the night." He stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind him. Justin locked it and stood there for a moment, listening to Jack's footsteps fade into the snow. From the kitchen, Kara said, "I like him." Justin didn't answer right away. He was peering through the small window set in the door. "Yeah," he said finally. "I do too." Justin carried Teddy upstairs and laid him gently in the crib. Teddy stirred once, a hand lifting before settling again. Then he was still. Justin watched him for a moment, then turned off the light and closed the door softly. Downstairs, Kara rinsed dishes. The house warmed back to its usual sounds. Outside, the snow fell through the gathering darkness. By late morning the next day, the house already felt behind. They had been up for the day since before 5. The stretch of time between feedings collapsing into something formless and uncounted. Teddy's nap schedule, such as it was, had slipped again. He'd gone down early, woken too soon, and now refused his second nap entirely. Justin had already walked him twice around the living room, paced the hall once, and bounced him gently by the window while snow slid off the eaves in soft clumps. Teddy's eyes would drift shut for a moment, his breathing deepening, and then, just as Justin slowed, his eyes would snap open again, alert and offended. "Buddy," Justin murmured, "we are struggling." Teddy answered by curling his fingers into Justin's sweatshirt and letting out a sharp, brief cry. Kara was in the kitchen rinsing bottles. "He slept too long this morning," she said. "He slept an hour," Justin said. "Exactly." Justin sighed and kept moving. His lower back ached, the familiar soreness that came from carrying weight that never held itself. He tried the nursery again, the rocker, the dimmer light. Nothing worked. Eventually, Teddy wore himself out. Justin felt the moment when the tension drained from his small body, when his grip loosened, and his head went heavy against Justin's collarbone. Justin waited a full 2 minutes before lowering him into the crib. Teddy was asleep at last. Justin stood there longer than necessary, watching for any sign of reversal. When none came, he backed out and closed the door carefully. Downstairs, the house was quiet in the thin, provisional way it always was when Teddy finally slept. Kara poured coffee and slid a mug toward Justin. "Snow's starting up again," she said. "Feels like we say that 10 times a day." Justin looked out the window. Snow was falling fast, erasing the shallow tracks he'd made earlier in the day. He turned on the television. The local station was back on storm coverage. A meteorologist stood in front of a map washed in blue and white, tracing a slow-moving band with the side of her hand. "Another system moving in from the west," she said. "We're expecting an additional 6 to 8 inches overnight, with heavier accumulation possible in some areas. Travel is discouraged, especially after dark." Justin turned the volume down to a low murmur, watching the crawl at the bottom of the screen. Road advisories, school closures, reminders to shovel around exhaust vents. When the meteorologist stepped aside, the anchor's voice came through, quieter and distinctly more serious. "And now an update on the case we first reported earlier this week." Kara glanced up from the counter, registering the change in tone more than the words themselves. The volume was too low for her to make out the details. Justin leaned closer to the screen. "Police this afternoon released new details in the investigation into the deaths of a family of 4 found in their home in the Mapleview Heights neighborhood of Northfield." Justin pulled in a short breath and held it. Authorities say the victims were discovered in the home's basement several days ago after a relative requested a welfare check. A still image appeared, a modest colonial, snow banked high along the front walk, police tape stretched across the driveway. Police report that it appears every item of value in the home was taken. Electronics, jewelry, cash, and personal documents were all missing. Justin didn't move. His arm was still half raised with the remote pointed. Disturbingly, investigators believe the suspect remained inside the home for an extended period of time after the murders. Kara paused at the sink, watching Justin's frozen posture, not the television. The children's rooms appear to have been used repeatedly, the anchor said. Detectives say a child's bed showed clear signs of being slept in. Bedding was displaced, food wrappers and refuse found on the floor. Authorities believe the suspect lived in the room for days, possibly longer. Many details are being withheld by Northfield police, who are now working with the FBI. Channel 8's own Deborah Castelli asked Police Chief Ed Thorpe if the case was linked to others, given the involvement of the FBI. He declined to answer. Justin muted the television. The room fell quiet, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator and the muffled sound of wind against the house. Kara leaned across the kitchen island toward him. "What was that?" He shook his head. "Nothing." She waited. Nothing, he corrected. "Just bad." She studied his face. "Bad how?" He glanced toward the staircase, then back to the TV. "The family. Someone broke in, took everything, stayed in the house." Kara was quiet for a moment. "Stayed?" "That's what they're saying. Stayed after." She looked down, rubbing her thumb along the edge of the counter. "Oh, God." Justin crossed the room and checked the front door. Locked. He checked the back door. Locked. He paused at the door to the garage, listening. "You're spiraling," Kara said gently. "I know," he said. She nodded. "I get it. Take a breath. Go watch Teddy sleep. You love doing that." But Justin didn't watch Teddy sleep. He opened his laptop instead. In minutes, he'd found a true crime message board discussing the Mapleview Heights case and theorizing its connection to a string of other home invasions and murders. The killer, if it was the same one, had a fixation on children. Not that the children were dealt with any more or less brutally than the adults, but the way the assailant lingered in the bedrooms, playrooms, and nurseries after he dispatched the family suggested something warped and persistent. Justin saw crime scene photos of toys and stuffed animals posed in the rooms long after the killer had gone. It was hard to imagine a person who did these horrible things and then felt drawn to play with children's toys and sleep in a miniature bed. It was nearly as disturbing as the violence. Justin heard Kara's voice in his head. "You're spiraling." He closed the laptop. They moved through the rest of the afternoon in careful quiet. The snow thickened, the light faded. Teddy woke, ate, slept again. That night the wind pressed against the house, settling and rising. Snow whispered against the siding. The two climbed into bed, grateful for the heavy blankets. "If I don't see Mrs. Radcliffe tomorrow," Justin said into the dark, "I think I'm going to do something." Kara turned toward him. "Like what?" "I'll ask Jack if he's noticed anything else," Justin said. "If not, we'll go over together, or I'll call it in. Have the police do a welfare check." Kara was silent for a moment. Then, "Together?" "Together," Justin said. "I don't want to do it alone." She exhaled. "Probably smart." Justin lay awake for a while after her breathing evened out, listening to the storm gather itself outside. By the time he fell asleep, tomorrow had already taken shape in his mind. The snow was heavier by mid-afternoon, coming down in dense sheets that dulled sound and made moving through it slow work. Justin pulled on his boots and coat and stepped out into it, shovel in hand. He cleared his own walk first, working steadily, pausing often to keep from sweating. The snow came off the shovel in thick slabs. Each pass began to fill in almost immediately. It felt pointless, but he kept at it. When he finished, he stood at the edge of the driveway and looked across the street. Mrs. Radcliffe's place was unchanged. Curtains drawn, no light in the windows, snow piled high along the front steps, untouched. The driveway was filled in except for a single line of prints cutting across it. Justin leaned on the shovel and squinted. They were boot prints, large ones, deeply set. They came from the street, crossed the driveway, and angled toward the side of the house. He followed them with his eyes until they disappeared at the edge of the garage door. They stopped there. Justin waited, expecting more prints to appear, some continuation he'd missed. Nothing did. He checked the street in both directions. No cars, no movement, just the steady, close fall of snow. As he watched, he noticed a faint light on behind the garage door windows. The garage door opener light. It glowed for a second longer, then clicked off. Justin straightened. He stood very still, shovel planted at his feet. The light did not come back on. The garage door did not open. Nothing moved. He told himself it could have been anything. A timer, perhaps. He looked again at the footprints. They were already filling in. Justin turned and headed back to his house. He leaned his trusty shovel against the wall beside the front door. He'd need it again before long. Tara was in the kitchen, Teddy strapped to her chest in the carrier. She was stirring something on the stove, moving carefully, one hand steadying Teddy's head. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. "Did you finish?" "Yeah," Justin said, "for now." He washed his hands and leaned against the counter. Teddy made a small sound and settled again. "You okay?" Kara asked. "Yeah," Justin said. He took a breath. "I just saw something weird." She waited. "There were footprints over at Miss Radcliffe's," he said. "Big ones. Fresh." Kara frowned. "Maybe a plow guy? Or someone checking on her?" "They went to the garage," Justin said, "and stopped." "Okay," Kara said cautiously. "And a light was on in there," he said. "Inside the garage. Just for a second." Kara turned the heat down and faced him fully. "Did you see someone?" "No," Justin said. "Just the prints and the light." She was quiet for a moment. "I know," he said. "I know how it sounds." They ate at the table, Teddy asleep against Kara's chest. Justin barely tasted the food. He watched the window, the snow blurring the view across the street. "This could be nothing," he said, more to himself than to her. "She could have someone staying with her, or someone came by and left." Kara nodded. "That's likely." "But if it's not," Justin said, "if something's wrong." "We can call it in," she said. "That's what welfare checks are for." "I know," he said. "I just don't want to be wrong." After dinner, he carried Teddy upstairs and laid him down. Teddy stirred and then went still. Justin stood over the crib, listening to his breathing. Downstairs, Kara cleaned up. The storm pressed harder against the house, snow ticking against the windows in uneven bursts. Justin came back down and pulled on his sweater again. "I'm going next door to enlist Jack," he said. "Now?" Kara asked. "Yeah, I'm tired of wondering, and if we go over together, I won't feel as crazy. Just neighborly." Kara watched him for a long moment. "Just see if anyone answers the door," she said. "Don't do anything." "We won't," Justin said. "I promise." He pulled on his coat and boots again, paused at the door, and then turned back. "It's nothing, I'm sure," he said. "We'll laugh about it tomorrow." Kara didn't smile, but she nodded. Justin stepped out into the dark. Justin didn't know if it was faster to cut through the yard's deep snow or head out his driveway and back into Jack's. In the end, he used the driveway to keep his boots and pants dry. As he approached Jack's front porch, He wondered what sort of work Jack might do on the place once the good weather arrived. The house needed to be painted, or maybe he'd opt for vinyl siding. The gray-blue color was inoffensive but bland. As he stepped onto the porch, his steps sounded hollow. The porch was bare. That made sense. Jack had bought the place in winter. No need to put out patio furniture until he could use it. As he stepped to the door, he noticed a few dozen takeout menus and other brightly colored advertisements scattered on the floor. Justin raised his eyebrows in private judgment and knocked gently on the storm door. He stepped back and waited. Glancing in the front picture window, he couldn't see much. It was dark inside. Justin began to worry Jack wasn't home. He decided that his knock may have been too soft. He opened the storm door and knocked once, harder, on the wood front door. It swung open easily as his knuckles contacted the wood. His face grew hot with embarrassment. Justin hadn't intended on opening Jack's door, and now he couldn't correct it without stepping inside and committing a further faux pas. "Idiot," Justin scolded under his breath. He waited another moment before deciding Jack still hadn't heard him or was indeed out of the house. Justin put his head through the threshold to call to Jack, but he kept his face and eyes down out of respect. No need to be snooping. It was as he looked down and opened his mouth to call out that he saw something. His breath caught in his chest. He was looking at the for sale sign he'd seen planted in the front yard all those months until Jack bought the place a few weeks ago. Justin lifted his gaze, no longer caring to be polite. The room was empty. He looked beyond the living space to the kitchen. It was empty too. There were a few takeout restaurant bags on the floor beside the sink. Without thinking, Justin stepped inside. The storm door hissed on its pressurized closing arm, and Justin reached back to catch it before it slammed. The house appeared as empty as it had been all the months it sat on the market. Why would Jack live this way? He thought back. He'd never seen a moving truck. Kara had never mentioned it either. But they had both been in the fog of exhaustion when Jack had turned up. They could have easily missed it. However, standing in the empty living room, a thought began to gnaw at the edges of Justin's mind. The house was dark, the last of the afternoon light long gone outside. Justin stepped to the window, facing his house. He saw the tree stump on Jack's side. He knew his own tree had been just beyond it, creating a natural barrier between their houses. Looking up, he saw that with the trees gone, he had a clear view into the bedroom and nursery windows. Before Justin could assemble the significance of these discoveries, he heard Kara scream. It was muffled by the walls and the snow outside, but he knew it was her. The lights of his house blazed into the night, and he could see into both levels. Seconds after the scream, he saw her. She was in Teddy's room. She slammed the door so hard Justin flinched. Then, with terror rising in his chest, he watched her begin to drag Teddy's dresser in front of the door. Only a few seconds had passed since the scream, and Justin didn't hesitate any longer. He dashed to the front door. He leapt off the porch without touching a step, and stumbled chest first into the snow. When he was on his feet again, he glanced desperately to the first-floor windows of his house and saw what he knew he'd see. What part of him had known since laying eyes on the discarded for sale sign moments before. It was Jack. He was taking swift, confident strides toward the staircase. Before Justin could cover any ground at all, Jack was ascending the stairs and disappeared from view. The snow had drifted irregularly in the yard. Justin was wading through it with agonizing slowness. He was nearly waist-deep when he ventured another look up at Kara. She was shouting, her back pressed to the dresser. Her eyes were stretched open in terror. Get to them, Justin thought as he pushed ahead. Get to them. It was with a small measure of relief that Justin saw Kara had her phone in her hand. There was no doubt she was shouting to the 911 dispatcher. At last, he broke free of the deepest snow and dashed around the corner of the house to the front steps. Instinctively, he seized his snow shovel from its place beside the door. As Justin charged up the stairs, he shouted Jack's name. He didn't care if Jack knew he was coming. Anything to get his attention off Kara and Teddy. "The cops are coming, Jack!" Justin roared as he rushed up the stairs 2 and 3 at a time. His voice was steady and commanding. He was afraid, but not of Jack. Justin could hear Teddy crying now, surely woken by Kara's screams. He felt something rising in him he didn't know was possible. The hallway lost its depth, flattening to the door in front of him. He saw the man who called himself Jack twisting frantically at the doorknob of the nursery, his shoulder pressed to the door. Justin was nearly on him now, and he roared again, but this time only one word. "You!" Jack turned and looked up as the shovel sliced through the air. The metal blade of the shovel connected with his forehead with a sickening crack. Jack slumped to the floor without making a sound. Justin stood over him, breathing hard. The urge to hit him again was overwhelming. It was only Teddy's cries that brought him back from the brink. He dropped the shovel and nudged Jack with his foot. The man didn't move. "Kara," Justin said. Now his voice broke. "It's me. We're okay. I got him." The peal of police sirens drifted in from streets away. The newspaper headline above Jack's mugshot haunted Justin and Kara almost as much as their encounter with the man himself. His real name was Herman Michael Bell, and when they arrested him and dragged him into court to be arraigned days later, he'd given the press the quote that appeared on the front page. "But I'm just a little kid," he'd said. The reporters were stunned into silence. Justin and Kara did sell their house. It wasn't the relived trauma of their upstairs hallway or Teddy's nursery that did it. It was Mrs. Radcliffe. The police had found her, wrapped in plastic, in a chest freezer she'd kept in her garage. Kara told Justin there was nothing he could have done differently. The police said she'd been dead days before Justin's suspicions arose. But her house, Jack's house, the tree stumps were still there. In the end, they couldn't endure it. They moved the following spring after the snow finally receded and the yard returned to mud. The new house was smaller, farther from the road, plenty of trees. Teddy learned to crawl there, then to walk. Justin still double-checked the locks, memorized the sounds the house made, and stood at the windows, watching when it snowed.
Thanks for listening to tonight's Terror. If you enjoyed the story, follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps new listeners find the show. Visit tonightsterror.com for all our stories, merch, and more. Until next time, sleep well.